Hello Internet, it's me, Golden Stalfos. Just a quick little thing before the video starts. I just today found out that Mr. Beast is doing another big, huge charity thing. This time, instead of planting trees, he's trying to clean up the ocean, which is cool. It's a really cool idea, and there will be a link to it down in the description, along with all the other charities I normally link to. I think it's important to put into context that even though the 30 million goal for this sounds like a lot, there are some estimates that have more than 30 million tons of trash in the ocean. So removing 30 million pounds isn't going to be like fixing the problem, but it's a start and it's a way we can lead into further action. So get on that. Cool. Here's the video. Thanks. Bye. Hello Internet, my name is the Golden Stalfos, and today we're going to talk about Metroid Dread. This is probably going to be my Spooky Day episode, even though Metroid Dread isn't a particularly spooky game. It comes from a franchise based on horror, but it itself is not at all scary, which is funny since they're trying to emulate the really scary part from Fusion and failing really bad, but we'll talk about that later. Now, I've tried to make this video several times, and it keeps ending up being way longer than I want it to be, so forgive me if I skip over a few things for brevity, but let's do this. Metroid Dread is a distinct and meaningful improvement over Samus Returns, but that doesn't really matter because Samus Returns sucked ass. It's so bad. The way they ham-fistedly shoved melee combat into a traditionally range combat-focused game is just... oh, it's so awful. And quite frankly, while that is one of the biggest issues I had with Samus Returns, it is by no means the only one. The control scheme, for one, is... my god, what are you doing? How can you make anything this clunky and think it's okay? But they didn't learn their lesson on a lot of that stuff. Like, there are some things where they made meaningful improvements, right? Like, the melee counter is now less annoying. Before, you needed it every time you encountered an enemy. Period, end of story. There were no enemies you could fight without the melee counter, and it sucked, and I hated it. And now, the melee counter is just the best option 90% of the time, so sometimes you can do without it if you want to suck and not get as many rewards from killing the enemy. But you know, it's an option, kinda. And I will grant that the control scheme is miles ahead of what we had on Samus Returns because you don't have to fiddle around with a touch menu in order to activate basic abilities. But it's not good still. Like, you still need 4 buttons to use missiles, and missiles are required for every fight because they decided that bosses should only be damaged by missiles for some reason. No, I'm not kidding. In order to shoot missiles at a target, you need to hold down both of your buttons on your shoulders and move your joystick, which means you can't move because you have to use that joystick for aiming, and then press the fire button. Why? Shooting missiles is usually a 1-button command. Usually it gets its own dedicated missile button, like in 3D games, how they did that. And quite frankly, that's just the tip of the iceberg with the problems with the controller, but I have to move on. The controller is so fucked up. They should have just let it be remappable like it is in AM2R, and don't try to tell me that they can't. Lots of games on Switch have remappable controls. They just aren't made by Nintendo because Nintendo hates you and hates your ability to play the game in a way that doesn't suck. And obviously, having a god-awful bad control scheme makes a lot of aspects of the game more annoying than they otherwise would be. You know, like, for example, it's really fucking annoying that bosses can only be damaged by missiles most of the time. But that would be a lot less annoying if I could use missiles as easily as I could in every previous entry in the series. Making missile use a pain in the ass makes bosses a pain in the ass because you require missiles for bosses, even though that's never been a requirement before. Now, granted, it's not that big of a departure because you do usually use missiles anyway for bosses because they deal the most damage, but like, it was never a requirement before. The map design is on a whole other level of asinine bullshit. In the last game, there wasn't much to say about the map design because it was more or less the same as in the original Metroid 2. And so the map wasn't too horrible. I mean, there were these weird warp things which sucked and you never wanted to use them. But, other than that, it was just kind of the same map as before for the most part. However, in this game, they really decided to fuck with the map. First of all, there are a lot of redundant rooms. Each area has 3 different rooms that operate as save rooms. There's the regular save rooms, which are already redundant and useless because you have autosave now, but whatever. There are the navigation rooms where you can talk to Adam, just like in Fusion, because this is just a Fusion remake, don't let them fool you. And there are map rooms where you get the map for the area, except it's not filled in. So I don't know why you get the map, but whatever. Then there are the recharge pedestals, which come in 3 varieties for no fucking reason. I don't know why you can't just get a refill when you hit a save station. But no, instead there's 3 different sections where one refills health, one refills ammo, and one refills both. And they're just scattered around pretty much at random. Some of them are very close together and some of them are very far apart, and there seems to be no rhyme or reason to it. It's just clutter. Like just clutter to clutter up the map screen and make it harder to navigate. Then there are the teleporter pads, which are so much worse than before. See, there's a whole bunch of pairs of teleporter pads, and at first they each only teleport between each other. But then once you found all of the different pairs, now they're all interconnected and actually allow you to travel quickly between areas. Assuming you can get past the insanely long load screens. Seriously, what the fuck is up with these load screens? They take so goddamn long. It's insane. Me describing how long they have taken did not take as long as those load screens. This is clearly part of a concerted effort to funnel players through a linear path. Now, I know as soon as I say that, people are going to start talking about all the sequence breaks you can do, and I'm sure you'll find plenty of videos explaining how you could do sequence breaks. But what I'm saying is, when I was playing through the game for the first time and looking around trying to explore, I never felt like I had more than one path. Whether there was a second path or not isn't really as important to me as the fact that the game intentionally uses its language to convey the idea that there is only one path. For example, Metroid Fusion is a game that really doesn't have a whole lot of sequence breaking and is very linear, and yet in that game I have never felt as funneled in one direction as I did throughout most of this game, which sucks. Now, sure, that is unquantifiable stuff about how I feel about the game, but I've never felt as cornered and shunted down a singular path in a Metroid game as I have in this one, except in Samus Returns. So, yeah, feels gross. Not much else to say about it. Oh, before I go, one more thing about the map. The map is smaller than in a lot of previous 2D Metroid games, like it's smaller than Super Metroid on the SNES, but it makes it feel longer by doing a couple of tricky things. One is that they don't interconnect sections of the same map. So there are lots of areas where 2 rooms look like they're right next to each other on the map, but in order to go from one to the other, you have to navigate the entire area, which is obviously a huge pain in the ass. And then also the connections between areas. Like once you've got the full map, it looks like there's lots of connections between areas. But as you're going through the game, you're very restricted in which areas can connect to which other areas. And there usually isn't a direct route from where you are to where you want to be, right? Like if you're in area A and you need to get to area C, you will probably have to go through area B and D in order to do it, which is annoying. And there are even some areas on the map that are only linked to one other area and don't have any other connections. It's kind of gross to see a Metroid map that looks this unidirectional, I guess. I don't know. Like, to me, the ideal standard for a Metroid map should be every area connects to at least 3 others in convenient ways. Like how Dark Souls does it at the beginning. Granted, even Dark Souls isn't perfect about that. Like they get some areas a little bit fucked up in that, but like does better than this by a lot. The last thing I want to talk about is the quote unquote difficulty. Now, I'm using air quotes there because the game is not actually difficult at all by any metric, but there are lots of sections where you'll probably die many, many times and have to redo it over and over and over again in a very frustrating fashion because they needed to pad out the runtime. I'll probably make a video in the future about why this kind of shit isn't difficult or challenging or interesting or fun, and rather is a trick that game designers use to make you hate their game. But for now, I just want to talk about how this particular trick is used in this particular game. And since I know some people are going to jump to the game's defense by claiming that I'm just a loser noob or whatever, no. I've been playing Metroid since, Jesus Christ, I was like 7? Like I was so fucking young. I've 100%ed every single Metroid game, including this one. And not only am I the kind of person who's played this series for a really long time and has really enjoyed all of the various challenges in this series, but I also enjoy lots of other kinds of challenges. I casually do challenge runs in Dark Souls for no other reason than I feel like it. I usually don't even stream them. I beat Gwyn with a fucking bow, okay? I mean, realistically, that isn't too hard once you get the parry timings down, but whatever. Point is, when I bitch about this game because it's annoyingly repetitive in its boss fights and stuff, it's not because the game is too hard for me. It's because the game is too stupid and poorly designed for me. Okay? Okay. So because the game is smaller than a lot of previous games, they do a lot to make you redo sections over and over and over again. For example, the EMMIs. There are 7 of them. They're all the same except for the first one, which you kill before you even do anything with it, and the last one, which you kill a little bit differently than the others, but whatever. Before each EMMI fight, except for the 2 I just mentioned are a little bit different, you have to fight this little mini boss. It's not like difficult or complicated or anything. You just run back and forth across the screen, blowing up the ammunition and shooting it with missiles. It's very tedious and uninteresting, and especially by the 5th time you're fighting the same boss with no change in the attack patterns, you feel like, why are you recycling this of all things? This is not fun. And then after you do that, you can destroy the EMMI by completing a small sequence of dumb bullshit. And if you fuck up that sequence, then it'll probably grab you and probably insta-kill you because it's an insta-kill enemy, because that's how you make people repeat shit over and over again, is you put an insta-kill obstacle in their way. Now that already sounds dumb and repetitive and frustrating to deal with so many times, until you realize that you don't even get the chance to do that dumb fight sequence until you've already been through the area where an EMMI is for like an hour. Like, I mean, the actual amount of time it takes depends on a lot of shit, but like, you have to go back and forth through the area they're in several times before you're allowed to fight the boss and get the energy you need to kill them. And it's just so fucking annoying, because every time you go through one of their areas, and they control about half of the map that they're in, and not always areas that are even connected to each other, just like disparate chunks of the map. Every time you do that, they magically appear right behind you and start chasing you as soon as you like move, sometimes even when you don't move. Like, you can go stealth mode so they can't see you, but like sometimes they'll just run into you anyway. So that's cool. And you can technically melee counter them to get out of it. But the thing is, I think the timing on it is really fucked, or my controller is really fucked, because after the first one where I was able to parry it like 7 times in a row, I wasn't able to get any more parries on them for the entire rest of the game, even though I could parry most of the other stuff very reliably. Like, I don't know what it was exactly. It just like stopped working after a few attempts, and I don't understand. Now, again, that might have just been an issue with my controller or something, but it felt bad. It felt very annoying. So, and heck, you might even say that was just me not being good at the counter timing. Although that wouldn't explain why I was able to do it at the beginning, or why I was able to get the counter timing on everything else. But whatever. Sure, I'm just bad at it. Okay, fine. It's still very long and very repetitive. And literally any fuck up means you instantly die and instantly have to go back and redo shit that you just did, which is annoying. Then there's the actual bosses. Most of the bosses that aren't repeated are very interesting and fun and cool, and I like them. It's nice to see Kraid again, you know. But some of the bosses are repeated several times, aside from the EMMI bosses. There's also these small Chozo robot things that shoot lasers at you and have this big old slash attack that sparks up the entire arena. And they show up like 7 times. There's so many of them, it's stupid. And then there's at least 3 distinct boss fights against a bigger Chozo robot thing that has a spear and turns into a goop monster after you beat it because it's fucking Enix Gundyr for some reason. And then you have to fight it in phase 2. And again, they do this 3 times, even though it's the same boss fight with the same attack patterns and everything. And you're just like, man, I already did this shit, but now it takes more missiles and I have less room for error because it deals more damage to my health. Wow, that's so not an increase in challenge, but absolutely an increase in repetition. Yay! Seriously though, the third version of that fight, each hit takes off 2 energy tanks. 2 full energy tanks with your final upgraded armor and everything. Like, that's insane, bro. No enemy in the history of this series has done that kind of damage. That's ridiculous. Why even have energy tanks if you're just going to knock them out 2 at a time? Like, Jesus Christ. That is not how damage numbers are meant to be set in this series. Like, I'm not saying you can't have that kind of game or that kind of fight where, like, you only get to get hit twice and then you're dead, right? Like, Mario is like that, you know? I actually suck at Mario games, I'm not even going to lie. But, you know, you get 1 hit from the fire flower and 1 hit from being big, and your 3rd hit, you die, right? And that's fine. No one has ever complained that enemies deal too much damage in Mario, because that's just the amount of damage they should deal. But, like, 2 energy tanks is a shitload of damage in the context of this series. Like, it's just absurd. And it doesn't really mesh with any of the series conventions. And it's bad. And like, they knew that because the final boss doesn't deal more than like 60 points of damage per hit. And like, those are his bigger hits. Like, most of it is way less than that. And here's the thing. If at some point in the course of your game design you find yourself reusing a boss for the 3rd time and then giving it damage numbers that drastically outpace the final boss just so it can last longer, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you padding your game out like this? What is wrong with you? Just release the smaller game. Like, the game isn't worth $60 as is. Do you think if you took away 2 repeated boss fights, it would suddenly not be worth $60 even more? And the same kind of goes for a lot of the endgame collection stuff. Like, you don't even get power bombs until the very last upgrade. And then from that point, the only thing you can use power bombs on is the blocks that unlock power bomb expansions. Again, you can't use them in boss fights because nothing works in boss fights except for super missiles. Oh, except 1 attack the final boss does gets interrupted by power bombs. That's it. It doesn't even damage the boss. It just breaks up that 1 attack. Why? I have no idea. It's very dumb. Or like I mentioned earlier, the Shine Spark thing is really dumb because 1, you need to push a button to activate the Shine Spark, which is annoying. 2, you need to press the jump button in order to release the Shine Spark, which I can't tell you the number of times it just jumped instead of doing the thing. It's so dumb. And 3, they built basically every Shine Spark puzzle as a thing where you have to go in between rooms in order to build up speed. And that is annoying and means enemies will sometimes respawn. And so you have to like clear them out before you can start trying again. And it's just, why? Why so tedious? It's not difficult. It's not challenging. I did them all. I could do them all again. But it takes so much time and repetition for no reason. And even with all of that padding, it's still shorter than a lot of other Metroid games. It's really sad. So yeah, in general, the game is too small and too short, but has way too much repetition and way too much padding. And also this control scheme is dog shit. It did some interesting things, you know. I really like the cross bomb. That's a cool new mechanic to throw into the mix, you know. I kind of liked the way that missile expansions got smaller, because that means you can have more of them scattered around and stuff. Except that they also made a missile expansion that's worth 10, so that fills up faster. And they also made it so that super missiles aren't a thing, so you don't need separate expansions for that. So there's actually not dramatically more upgrades scattered around. You just have smaller missile expansions for some reason. Is weird as a choice. They also split some energy tanks into 4, but not all of them, which feels really weird to me. Like, either do the Zelda thing or don't, but don't halfway it. Also, because of the way upgrades are spaced and stuff, there are some boss fights that just don't have any reward after them. Like, you get a power-up from every single one of the EMMIs and most of the repeated bosses, but some of the unique ones just don't have anything after them, which feels bad, man. Also, the gravity suit upgrade has like 12 times more things on it than you would expect it to have. And I feel like there were going to be more suit upgrades, but they had to cut them. And so they just shunted everything onto the gravity suit. And it's cool, I guess, that it is such a big enhancement, but also it feels really weird that all of this stuff is coming on the gravity. You only have 2 suit upgrades in the entire game, and the Varia suit just lets you go into rooms that are red, and the gravity suit lets you do everything else. It's so weird. So yeah, overall, it's not the worst game in the franchise, but it's really not very good, and I don't like it. And I really don't like that it costs $60 while being this fucking short and repetitive. It's just not worth it. I don't know. Let's hope Prime 4 is good. Or ever comes out, you know, one of the two. I mean, I have all of the faith in Retro Studios based on past performance, but at this point, I think I have to pick one or the other, so... oh well. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Go back and play AM2R again. It's way better than this. I will see you in the next life. Laters. Hey, Endcard here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Like, seriously though, please subscribe. I have like no subscribers. It's sad. If you want to find me on other social media stuff, you can do that at the Golden Stalfos on basically everything. Links to that are in the description, as well as to some charities I like but am obviously not affiliated with. I also have a Patreon if you like me so much that you want to give me money, though obviously only do that if you have money to burn, and if you do have money to burn, they're the charities I mentioned before. They probably need it more than I do. Mad ups to my girlfriend for doing all the editing for these videos. It's a really big help. Oh, and I occasionally stream on Twitch, so follow me there so you don't miss it. I don't have a formal schedule because when I tried to have a formal schedule, I couldn't keep to it, so oh well. Okay, thanks, bye!